Uh, Abstract brainwaves, game genie in a beanie. We ain't on the same stage, leveled up.
Other Yellow Hat Guy here, back with another video. It's time for another movie review. So, last time we checked out Spider-Man No Way Home. Really good movie, I enjoyed that. Pretty much a perfect movie for me. This year, the two movies I was most excited for was that movie and the movie we're talking about today, Matrix Resurrections. A lot of hype around this. The first Matrix came out late 90s, early 2000s, that time period, and there was nothing like it. I mean, the fact that people still use phone booths, right? We don't use those anymore today. Everybody's got, a cell phone. It's almost Seinfeldian where, if you had cell phones, maybe a lot of things could have been handled more efficiently. But moving on from that point, you've got Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss, and surprisingly, Lawrence Fishburne was not brought back. I don't know if they were trying to go for a youthful appeal or there was some kind of fallout. I don't really want to speculate. Maybe he had an issue with, the writers. It's just interesting that he wasn't there. Hugo Weaving was not in. Hopefully I said his name right. He wasn't in this one, so that bothered me. You had to have Agent Smith be Agent Smith. I just couldn't see anyone else in that role. The guy playing Morpheus did a okay job, and then you've got Neil Patrick Harris having a debut in this movie as some sort of therapist character, but there's more to it than what meets the eye. So this is supposed to play off the third Matrix. Third Matrix was not received well. The first Matrix kind of gave you this idea that you could be more than what you are, or maybe you are, and you just have to choose to accept a different life. And there's going to be people that don't agree with this new you or this true you and want you to be this regular you. And so there's allegories there of different things, and we'll talk about that in a second. The second movie was, so what happens after that? Is Neo some kind of god now? What kind of powers? He's pretty much a superhero. And what happens when you go against the system? Often it doesn't end well when you get too powerful, you fly too high to the sun, your wings can melt. So then you have the third movie, which was just like, nothing lasts forever. Can humanity, win this fight against, nature? I don't know. That's kind of how I looked at it. I could be wrong, but either way, that third movie didn't pan out too well. The second one, you look back, it was like Star Wars. You had that wait between The Empire Strikes Back and the Jedi, Return of the Jedi, right? And then you had, Back to the Future 2 and 3, and then, you've had several franchises that had this back-to-back thing, and you had to wait. A lot of us now remember the Marvel movies, from Infinity War to Endgame, but those first two Matrix movies, or I should say the second and third Matrix movies had that kind of hype around them. So that third one ended in a way, spoilers, if you hadn't seen that, then I'm sorry. It ended where they died. So I was like, well, what do you do? How do you bring people back here? And then they kind of showed you that, so I won't get into those details here. But Neo and Trinity had their DSI, or, pretty much their kind of like their appearance altered to where while they still existed, the new Matrix that was created they weren't identifiable. And you had a group of hackers who believed he was still, he being Neo, that he was still around and they could get him. It's revealed that Neo and Trinity kind of need each other to defy, this whole system here going on. Neo, being blue-pilled up, looks at this new Matrix as something he created. He's a game designer, and it starts off slow where you kind of see where he's been all this time, and although he looks like Keanu Reeves, and Neo to us, he's really has a different appearance all this time to everyone else. Agent Smith, you know, they try. I guess that was a way to write out not having Hugo Weaving in this movie because you have a different actor serving that role. He was able to then say, "Hey, this is how I want to look." He's actually Neo's boss in this movie, and you know they don't even refer to him Neo. They call him Tom. You know, Thomas Anderson. Trinity has a different life. She's a mother, married, you know, some children. Goes by the name Tiffany. She loves to work on bikes and everything. All the while Neo is being controlled because you have this therapist who's constantly giving him these blue pills to tell him that he was crazy. This whole first Matrix thing was crazy, and to turn it into a video game, thus creating this new Matrix. So all of that made for an interesting story. It just relied heavily on the first movie to get to this point. A lot of people didn't like how Trinity was kind of handled in the last movie. They kind of rectify that here in this movie. They give her some sort of, you know, independence and stature, and you know, she's not some damsel in distress. She was never that character, but it felt like she was when you compare her to Neo, who, you know, is the one. And he just lets you know, hey, I never believed I was the one. She believed I was the one, so, you know, therefore I guess I was in that light. So it's all in how you see yourself. So it's like, what is the Matrix itself? You know, they reference it in this movie. There's a quote here, and I don't know if I'll add it to this video or not, but I'll just basically read it to you. You know, they had these board meetings where they're talking about the Matrix itself. And one person is like, we need guns, lots of guns. And then the voices start blending together about what the Matrix really is. And this is something I never really thought about. Like, what is the Matrix? Is it about trans politics, crypto-fascism? It's a metaphor of capitalist exploitation. Now, that last one, I think that's what it was. To me, that's what it was. And I think that's what a lot of people resonated with. I can't speak for everyone, obviously, but out of those choices, that's what stood out to me as a young, straight male growing up in the late 90s. But digging deeper and hearing some speeches from the Wachowski brothers, now Wachowski sisters, it was probably not that. Here's why. So you see Thomas Anderson, working some desk job. Looks very unhappy, just a cog in the wheel. And we all can relate to 9-to-5 gigs like that where, you know, not everybody gets to do what they want to do or what they're meant to do. You just do something and you just simply exist. If you could find a way out of that and realize you have a bigger purpose, would you accept that? Some people would say, well, what's the risk? There's no reward without risk, right? And if you could defy that system and do something different, then you would. Take this whole pandemic, right? If you could quit your job and do something else, you would, but most people wouldn't because they know they would need money to get by to survive. But if somebody gave you a lump sum to say you can get by off of this for a while you get something else going, the risk there is you still lose your job and you're banking on something else working out. That's the same ideology here in this capitalist society, in my opinion. So that's where I connected, and you know, you look at wealth somewhat defying a matrix. It's a different world when you're able to not live check to check. But this isn't a finance video. This is about the Matrix. So me being a young kid seeing that, or a teenager, that's what I look at the Matrix being. You know, crypto-fascism, I can't really speak on that aspect of it. But the trans politics, I didn't think I could speak on that either. But when you put things together and as more information gets out there, it's really talking about transgenderism. Is it an ism? But look, they became from brothers to sisters. You got to take pills for your body to prep to what you really see yourself being. If you're a woman wanting to be a man or vice versa, you take some kind of hormones to change that. The reality is some people are going to be against that. They're going to see you differently, but this is how you may really see yourself. Red pill being the pill that you take to be, you know, what you want to be, and blue pill saying, hey, just leave things as they are. Continue being a woman even though you see yourself as a man, and vice versa. So when you think about it that way, it's like, oh, that's what was happening the whole time. This is why the movie resonated so well, because their heart was into it. They really put themselves into this movie. And sadly, the last 3 movies, they had already put that message out there and it wasn't there. I mean, you think about the agents who they started having a hive mind, similar mind. They could just touch somebody else and influence them to be just like Agent Smith. That's no different than our news media and everything doing those same things to have everybody think the same things about someone who simply wants to be free of this script, this narrative, and just even live their life to be free. And maybe for the Wachowskis and others who are, have transitioned or transitioning, they feel like they're free. They could fly once they are able to be what they truly want to be. And what stood out in the 90s, wearing trench coats, all black, you kind of stood out, looked different. Well, transition, you're going to stand out and look different. So that was mind-blowing. That was different. The bullet time, the hyper, choreography, the kung fu, all that, it was something that had never been seen before. 3 movies later, 22 years later, they aren't able to match that, unfortunately. When I say they, I mean that writing team. One of the brothers, now sister, had nothing to do with this movie, so it was a hard act to follow. There was a lot of splicing. In the beginning it seemed like, okay, it's a slow start, but they're trying to show you got to build up to something, and it just unfortunately fell flat. Neo is selfishly doing all this to save Trinity. People were kind of like, we'll help you because we know you love her, but we need you to be your old self. It's not something he really saw that he could do, but it just seemed like every other action movie at that point. Car chases, violence, destruction. There was nothing original in this movie. Hats off to Neil Patrick Harris in the role that he had. He did the best he could do. His character was interesting. The Smith guy, the replacement, just felt like it wasn't Hugo Weaving. He didn't give me this tax collector, this bill collector kind of vibe. He just looked like the annoying douchebag you didn't want to work for at a company. And maybe that was okay, but I preferred the Smith, the Hugo Weaving look. And they showed flashbacks to it and everything. There was a lot of jump cuts from the previous movies to the new one, and it didn't help at all. Like, this movie could not stand on its own. When you compare it to movies like these Marvel movies, love them or hate them, you don't have to have seen all the others to enjoy the current one that you're looking at. You just enjoy it a lot more if you may have seen it, whereas Matrix Resurrections, you pretty much have no business trying to watch that or understand it if you hadn't seen the others. So I'm going to I slept on it. I didn't want to give the review instantly. I tried not to do that with Spider-Man either, because these were both movies that were very hyped up. They were the 2 movies I was most looking forward to at the beginning of the year. I gave it a 6 last night. I'm still sticking with a light 6, I don't think I can go higher than that. I was like, could it be a 6.5, 7? No. Reality is it could be 5.5. But I'm sticking with a 6. I know you have some critics who just panned it because they were expecting it to be over the moon. You think the first Matrix, it was, again, nothing like it in its time. Great movie. They didn't mean for there to be more, but money talks. So, let me know what you think, dude. I don't think this was a horrible movie. I just don't think I would rush again to go see it in theaters. This is a straight to DVD type movie. This felt like, some YouTubers with expensive equipment and, purse strings could have convinced Keanu and Carrie Ann to come along and do this. That's how it felt to me. Hopefully they got paid handsomely. That's pretty much all I can say. But, no Lawrence Fishburne. It didn't feel, the implications of how serious things weren't there. And same thing with Hugo being the villain. It's like, although he wasn't really, I'll let you see the movie to decide for yourself. What is The Matrix to you? And then what did you think of this movie overall? Appreciate you guys watching. It's probably my last review movie-wise for the year. Maybe there might be one more, but it might be a movie that wasn't in theaters. We'll see. Like, comment, subscribe, share. Hope to see you in the next video. If not, as I look down for my shutter, we'll see you all in 2022. Other Yellow Hat Guy out. Captain Sensation!